And it's so nice to have everybody here. Thank you for coming. It's a shame we can't do this at the bookstore at Bear Pond Books, but it's also lovely to have people signing in from all over. We have people here from Harrisburg, people here from Washington State, and then people here locally, which is just nice to see everyone. I'm honored to present Ginny Sassaman and her new book, Preaching Happiness, Creating a Just and Joyful World. I have to hold it so you don't see the glare. I urge you to pick up a copy at Bear Pond Books in Montpelier. The store is open, but you can also order online and we ship anywhere. I'm going to drop the link for the book in our chat box. Let me know if you can see the chat box. You might have to open it. It might pop up on the side. That chat box is also where I'm going to encourage you to put your questions, because Ginny will do a Q&A later on after the reading. I just want to talk for a minute about the book. I love this book so much, and not just because I work at Rootstock. The book is really full of information on both policy changes and self-help practices and anything you need to know about happiness skills, which I didn't even really know that you needed skills to be happy. I always thought it was just something you either were or weren't. So it's nice to see practical tips on how to maintain happiness. You know, get out and dance or do some art or go for a walk or meditate. Ginny's voice is so kind and gentle, and reading this book really made me want to be that way too. I think everyone should read this book. I think it's so necessary, especially in these dark times. And I want to congratulate Ginny for bringing some of this light into the world. So as I said, tonight Ginny will read a few chapters from the book. Then we will be treated to some ukulele playing from Bob. And then Ginny will take questions for the discussion. So if you put your questions in the chat box, I'll be able to read them to her and she'll answer. And that's our program tonight. And I hope you have a great time. Again, thank you for joining us with Bear Pond Books and Rootstock Publishing. I'm going to please welcome Ginny Sassaman to the screen.
Yay. So thank you, Sam, and all of you. Thank you for joining in this celebratory event. Thank goodness we have things to celebrate. I also want to thank Rootstock Publishing and Stephen MacArthur for helping to launch this book and co-host tonight with Bear Pond Books. And I believe joining us somewhere, though I haven't seen her yet, pop up, is Amabel Shirlas, who was the editor of this book. And Amabel is just a magnificent editor who made this book so much better than it would have been otherwise. So wherever she is, I just want to really give a shout out to her. And then just a couple of quick points from me about the book before I share a few readings. I'm not actually reading a couple of chapters because each chapter is like 25 minutes long, but just a couple of segments from a couple of chapters. The book is called Preaching Happiness. And then many of you know this, but it's called Preaching Happiness because each chapter actually is a sermon that I delivered in a Unitarian church. And I really like this format. I will say that I have found as a rule in life that most people do not like being preached at unless that's what they're there for. And every time I'm in the pulpit and I look out at the congregation, I know that everybody out there is looking for something. They may want inspiration or provocation or education or comfort or humor. They want something, but I feel like people are wide open to receive the message that comes from a sermon that they are voluntarily attending. And so I hope the same is true with the book, that people are really open to the message. Also, each chapter is a combination of personal stories, theory, research, and some spiritual material. But the book espouses no particular theology. Everyone is invited into the conversation, no matter your faith or lack thereof. It doesn't really matter at all. Also, every chapter or sermon investigates each topic from both a personal point of view and from a meta overarching paradigm point of view. And you will hear both of those in the first reading, which comes from chapter 1, Happiness for Everyone, Our Moral Obligation to Change the Economic Paradigm. Here we go. My family was big into board games when I was growing up. A particular favorite was the game of life. After spinning the Wheel of Fortune, you got to steer a tiny car driven by your itsy bitsy peg person over actual bridges next to 3D buildings. It was thrilling to go to college, earn a degree, hopefully in a high-paying field, get married, and gather pink and blue children to fill the family sedan. In a way, it was all a bit maudlin as we headed inexorably, though colorfully, toward our final reckoning, the end of life in this board game fantasy land. And who won the game? Well, of course, the player with the most money and material well-being. Not the one who had the most satisfying career or gave generously in community service or who had a car full of pink and blue loving family members. Nope, it was all about financial assets. That's how you win at life, board game style. Amazing to think back on it now, how well trained we were to measure what matters in a real life economy based on never-ending growth and consumption. But life isn't actually a game with inflexible rules. We can make other choices. Indeed, it is a moral obligation for us to do better for ourselves and others, including future generations, so we can all be genuinely and collectively happier. That's what Greenpeace President Annie Leonard urges us to do. Before assuming her current role, she made provocative animated videos like The Story of Solutions, which suggests we can move toward a happy, sustainable planet by redefining what winning looks like. Currently, our cultural end goal is more money, bigger yachts, shinier toys, more prisons, more polluting smokestacks, more. Instead, Leonard suggests, we need to change the goal of our collective lives to better. I think Leonard's solution is brilliant for 3 reasons. First, she neatly illustrates that more does not equal quality of life at all. The GDP barometer merely measures how much money changed hands. It is completely amoral. That money could be, and mostly is, within the hands of a tiny fraction of humanity. It can include the cost of new solar panels, it's true, but it also includes money for new fossil fuel infrastructure. It does not include much that gladdens the human heart, such as our spiritual practices, trees, or grandbaby hugs. Despite the fact that the GDP was never meant to measure more than the exchange of goods and services, it has become the primary barometer for our collective well-being. It is high time we created a better barometer. Second, Leonard provides a positive common sense alternative. She never actually uses the words gross national happiness, but that is essentially what she prescribes, a new, inclusive, holistic way of measuring and encouraging a life well lived by actively reframing what success looks like. Finally, I find Leonard's solution brilliant because it is based on the very human hunger for accomplishment, winning the game. This hunger can lead those who might push a little too fervently to overachieve. Taken too far, this drive might manifest as greed. This is important because some think that greed is at the heart of many societal ills, and certainly the pursuit of an illusory, infinitely growing economy. But what if greed could be channeled as a social good? The work of Martin Seligman makes me believe this is possible. In his book Flourish, Seligman, who is known as the father of positive psychology and is also the former head of the American Psychological Association, describes 5 key elements of well-being. 1 is experiencing positive emotions. 2, being engaged in life using your strengths. 3 is positive relationships. 4 is meaning. And 5 is accomplishment. So of the 5 happiness needs, it's the A, accomplishment, that to me is the most unexpected and intriguing. While all the measures can be used for darkness or light, accomplishment seems especially prone to amorality. Though it can mean inventing a life-saving vaccine, it can also mean raising the rainforest to build a golf resort. Yet the desire for accomplishment is a life force we can harness. Both the story of solutions and the gross national happiness movement take the Aikido approach and work with, not against, human nature. Nobody's talking about utopia. We're envisioning better approaches that can be taken by real humans with all their complex wiring, including the accomplishment drive, which sometimes ramps up to all-out greed. By changing the end goal, what we want to achieve, to better, we can encourage everyone, including type A overachievers, to focus those desires directly on happiness rather than on the stepping stones of stuff and money. One way to do that is to change what we measure. As we wind our way through life, both personally and systemically, we use measurements to gauge how we're doing. It matters very much what we choose to measure because that's where we focus our limited time and energy. Believe me, in that life board game, which I always wanted to win, I paid careful attention to accruing financial assets. In real life, you can measure the cash in your retirement account, your blood pressure, and or how much fossil fuel you're burning, depending on your own narrative. And that data will guide your choices to an extent, at least, consciously or subconsciously. Yet each data point represents a small fraction of your overall complex story. To adequately assess your progress through life, you need a comprehensive, thoughtful set of measures. Perhaps you'd like to note how many friends you have dinner with regularly, or the number of volunteer hours you put in, maybe the mountains you've climbed, or the languages you speak. One of my measurement tools is a pedometer. I'm one of those 10,000 steps a day people. The steps are good, but the pedometer does not record whether I've taken the calcium I need for my osteoporosis, done my daily back exercises, meditated, had too much wine, or eaten too much chocolate. It doesn't measure if I've gotten enough sleep, hugged anybody, or savored the sunsets. Measuring GDP is kind of like the pedometer gone haywire, measuring one thing and one thing only. Yet there it is, regularly and enthusiastically cited in respected news sources. The GDP is up or down, as if that alone tells us whether we're happy and whether we're well. Chapter 2, I see people applauding. Yay, thank you. Chapter 2 looks more at personal happiness and something that may surprise you, which is the circular relationship between happiness and sadness. Reading 2. At a creativity retreat a few years ago, my friend Bronwyn grabbed her guitar and said, "Ginny, this should be your theme song." She then began serenading us with Donovan's song, "Happiness Runs." Bronwyn was on to something. The song's chorus, which repeatedly asserts that happiness runs in a circular motion, seems prescient. The more I learn about happiness, the more I appreciate its circular nature. The symbiotic relationship between personal well-being and a gross national happiness paradigm is a great example of the circular nature of happiness, though I'm pretty sure Donovan didn't have that in mind in the 1960s. I also suspect Donovan wasn't talking about the interdependence of happiness and sadness, though that connection also is necessary for good emotional health. The circular motion between happiness and sadness is one that I've spent time with lately. A little over a year ago, I developed troubling symptoms in my left eye, flashing, and a black spot called a floater. Oh yes, and just a wee bit of hemorrhaging behind the left retina. My optometrist sent me immediately to a retinal specialist. There, on a gorgeous Friday afternoon in June, I learned that my vision was threatened by retinal neovascularization, bleeding behind the retina. I had already suffered some permanent loss of vision and would, without treatment, go blind in that eye within a matter of months. Dr. Kim told me I urgently needed to begin painful eye injections starting the following Monday morning. I was in shock. Permanent vision loss, almost blind, painful eye injections. What if the medicine didn't work? What if my right eye developed the same condition? Over that long weekend, I unwittingly made the perfect happiness choice. I gave myself permission to dwell in sadness, to cry, to grieve, to acknowledge my mortality and fears about my very breakable body. I cocooned. I didn't want to be near anybody but my husband. Fortunately, I rebounded pretty quickly within the week. It helped that the eye injections weren't that painful and that the doctor was reassuring about both my eyes and about the efficacy of the medicine. It also helped that I've been building my happiness muscles for years now and was better able to see many silver linings. Amazingly, the medicine is only about 10 years old. Before that, patients just went blind. So how lucky am I? Further, the symptoms that sent me to the optometrist were unrelated to the neovascularization. So I am very fortunate that my vision loss was caught before it got any worse. Plus, I had health insurance. Can you imagine how much a retinal specialist costs? And brand new vision-saving drugs? Thank goodness I didn't have to go bankrupt to save my sight. During this scary time, I posted a blog about my challenge and received a virtual outpouring of love and support from friends online, and this filled my heart with joy. Finally, I gained a valuable insight. Happiness and sadness run in a circular motion. Paradoxically, happiness gave me the strength to grieve. Since I know what happiness feels like and what I need to do to coax it back, I didn't need to shortchange the crying. It works the other way too. That is, those who embrace the reality of suffering are better equipped to feel happy. We can't turn off the sad without also turning off the happy. As Golda Meir put it, those who do not know how to weep with their whole heart don't know how to laugh either. In Bhutan, where gross national happiness was born, they honor this belief in national policy. Residents there are encouraged to think about death 5 times a day. That may be more than most Americans can handle. Nonetheless, I say, let's all have a good cry now and then. We'll laugh more later. The circular relationship between happiness and sadness nicely illustrates that being your happiest self does not equate to a lifetime of sunny skies and smooth sailing. We are inescapably human and fated to experience stormy seas. Trying to be happy when what you really need to feel is sad is a recipe for disappointment. That disappointment could feel like failure, thus creating deeper unhappiness. Not good. The last thing I want to do is make anyone feel unhappy for not feeling happier. What I do want to do is share some of the whys and hows of cultivating happiness so you can recover more quickly from pain and live your best, most flourishing life. What then is happiness? Because happiness is so personal, we all have different ideas of what it means. I think of happiness as contentment and peace of mind with an enhanced capacity for joy, laughter, and other positive emotions. Researchers in the positive psychology field have used flourishing, thriving, and positivity as synonyms. If happiness is a word that discomforts you, I invite you to translate what I'm saying into one of those words, or perhaps well-being. It isn't the word that matters, it's the concept. I definitely like the word happiness. Aristotle wrote, "Happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence." The whole aim and end of human existence. I think that's pretty good. I'll stick with happiness. And now we have a little, thank you, a little musical interlude with Bob playing that Donovan song, Happiness Runs.
I'm here representing the ukulele group, which has played at a number of her sermons here. So I'm just one of many. Happiness runs in a circular motion. Thoughts is like a little boat upon the sea. Everybody is a part of anything anyway. You can have everything if you let yourself be. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs in a circular motion. Thought is like a little boat upon the sea. Everybody is a part of everything anyway. You can have everything if you let yourself be. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs in a circular motion. Thought is like a little boat upon the sea. Everybody is a part of everything anyway. You can have everything if you let yourself be. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Happiness runs, happiness runs. Why? Oh, because. Why? Oh, because. Why? Oh, because. Why? Oh, because. Happiness runs in a circular motion. Thought is like a little boat upon the sea. Everybody is a part of everything anyway. You can have everything if you let yourself be. You can have everything if you let yourself be. You can have everything if you let yourself be.
It's so nice having a live-in ukulele player. So the last reading is from the very end of the last chapter, and but it's not really a spoiler. You know, I don't think there's anything I'm going to say that would come as a surprise to anybody who has read any of the book. So it is from the last chapter, which is called Happiness Profits, Accessing Our Sacred Instructions to Create a Better World. And while I was writing this, I was heavily influenced by three women, a Roman Catholic nun, Sister Joan Chichester, who has written a book calling on all of us to be courageous prophets in these dark times. Also, Sherry Mitchell, who is a leader in the Penobscot tribe, and who says that we were all born with sacred instructions, the sacred instructions that we need right now to create a better world. And the third influence was esteemed social scientist Margaret Wheatley, who states unequivocally that we are currently in systems collapse and that we may well get to a better place, but not easily. Reading 3. One reason I am such a believer in the happiness movement is because it offers us so many wonderful ways to say yes in an era that will be requiring us to say no to old habits and ideas of success. Yes to relationships and spending quality time together. No to greed and wasteful consumerism that stresses the planet and our wallets. Yes to compassion and love for all beings. No to exploiting nature and animals as commodities to be used and thrown away. Yes to forgiveness. No to hate. Yes to beauty and creativity. No to overdevelopment and poisoning Earth with fossil fuels. These are our very important choices. With happiness, we can face the future with hope. Happiness has the potential of unifying very divided societies. Indeed, according to Paula Francis from the 10,000 Mile Happiness Walk, what truly matters in life is astonishingly consistent around the United States. She says people from all walks of life value love, kindness, oneness, peace, service to others, making others happy, nature, and of course, puppies. Knowing we all want essentially the same thing is a long way from creating the necessary inner and outer changes we need in order to come together and collectively heal our countries and this planet. Still, the unifying potential of collective happiness is really quite exciting. It's a place to start. At the same time, I think so much will be required from so many of us. Wheatley points to the difficulties that lie ahead and the frequent opportunities we will have to serve the human spirit. That won't necessarily be easy. We may not wish to heed our sacred instructions. We may yearn to return to a more comfortable way of living and being that one could argue no longer exists or perhaps never existed. Wheatley considers this passage from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring. Quote, "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." I faced such a choice at the 2019 Gross Global Happiness Conference in Costa Rica. Before I got there, I had been thinking that maybe this was my last hurrah, that it was time for me to retire. But I received a different message during a workshop there. My sacred instructions are to remain a happiness prophet. The workshop, led by Jennifer Shinkai of Tokyo, featured Ikigai, a Japanese concept for discovering one's purpose in life. She asked us 3 questions. What do you love? What are you good at? What can you be paid for? For each, we were asked to pick a photo that best represented our answers from her special points of view deck. The 4th question was, what does the world need? For this, the cards were face down. We couldn't see the photo until after we chose a card. I ended up with an old woman who looked grumpy. I didn't understand why, so I put the card back, which was allowed, the rules, and picked another. It was another old woman, seemingly on holiday at a British seaside resort. This time I kept the card. This woman's expression was puzzled, anxious, maybe a little hurt. She seemed to be pleading with me, please don't retire. Don't leave us. The world still needs you. Somehow, I don't know how, that photo of the elderly woman conveyed my sacred instructions. I have made my choice. However enchanting or brutal these times may turn out to be, I know that I must use my life to be a prophet of true well-being, of happiness for all. My great hope is that many of you will join me in this cause. Together, let us create a just and joyful world. May it be so. End of reading. So now I think Sam is going to read what's in the chat box.
Yeah, well, I can't read clapping, but yay. If anybody has any comments, questions, please use your chat box. There's a bar at the bottom where you hit the chat and you can type it in. Amabel said, Sister Joan rocks. Beth McNally said, go Ginny, go Bob. But if anybody has any questions, I see somebody is waving their hand. I don't know if that means a question. I don't know if I can unmute people. I don't think so. Oh, I have messages. Why aren't they showing? Here they go. So we have a Ginny, you are magnificent from Kayla Becker. Beautiful Ginny from Beth Allgood. Ronnie Coleman says, can you tell us your time on the happiness walk?
Oh, yes. And I know Paula is here too, by the way, this evening in this group. And Paula is the one who walked all 10,000 miles of the happiness walk. I walked a mere like 300 miles or so. And I walked in 4 different places. I walked in Pennsylvania outside of Philadelphia, in northern Florida, in Louisiana, in the Santa Fe area, and then from Portland, Oregon to Seattle. And it was, as Paula's quote suggested, well, it was an amazing, amazing experience. And I also felt that everybody basically wanted the same thing. And I was in very culturally different areas, and speaking and with people from, every race, religion, gender. I think the youngest person was 6 and the oldest person was in their 90s. And because on the happiness walk, we kept our mouths shut about our own political and religious beliefs, but we're just there to listen. People opened up to us, and it was remarkably the same. Family and relationships were the number one thing I'm sure that people wanted. And Paula just typed in a note that she's hard at work on the transcripts, and they'll be released sometime soon. But one of my favorite interviews, so there were thousands of interviews with people about what mattered most. One of my favorites actually happened right before I joined Paula in Louisiana, and Paula played it for me. But it was a woman who, like so many others, said that love is what matters most. But she took it a step further than many people. Many people focused on relationships in their lives. She said, what really matters most in life is the big love. The love we all need to have, for each other and for the planet. And so that has really stuck with me. That has really stuck with me quite a bit. I think that's what matters most in life is the big love.
Nice. Some more comments. The waving hand was applause. So there we go.
Thank you, Sharon.
Susan Ritz says she's inspired and looking forward to the book. Sharon Parker says, your words are being well received by us. Thank you. Beth has ordered your book and can't wait to read it. Barbara says, the quest to write a book has been with you for a long time. Can you talk about that quest? Oh, and it says Linda, even though the Zoom says Barbara. But.
Well, I thought I saw that Barbara and Linda were watching this together there. So, sure. So, because I came into the happiness movement from the systems happiness store. I mean, I was first taken, what grabbed me most was a book called The Geography of Bliss, where I first learned of the concept of gross national happiness, which just, it was just like a lightning bolt. That became like my life's work from the time I read that. And then, so I was in that world of looking at systems happiness, and that's kind of a world of economics and policymakers. But then I also began studying positive psychology and personal happiness. And it seemed to me that there were very few people in that nexus. There were a handful of people doing the gross national happiness piece, a growing number of people doing the personal happiness piece. So I began to feel like I had a unique story to tell, sort of bringing the two together and looking at how they inform and work with each other. And I had a number of attempts at starting the book in a variety of different ways. And then, and I had started doing sermons. I think the first sermon I did was back in, I think it was 2013. But then in 2017, there's a small church. For those of you who don't know, Unitarians have this tradition of often not holding church over the summer, but then there's some summer Unitarian churches. And there's a small church in Barnard, Vermont, that is summers only. And they asked me the first year to deliver 4 sermons out of their 8, which was quite a surprise. And I said, you do know I'm not actually a minister. And they said, nope, we want you. So I did 4 sermons there in 2017. And then in 2018, they asked me to do all but 1, so 7 more. And in the middle of writing those, so because it was to the same audience, each sermon was completely different and distinct. And halfway through writing in 2018, I realized that this was a book. And I also began to feel like it was a unique book, not only because of being at the nexus of both personal and systems change, but also because I don't think anybody else has done a book of sermons on happiness that I'm aware of. And then in 2019, I added another 5 back at that same church in Barnard. So I went to Stephen and Rootstock, and here we are.
Yeah, we're so glad. Amabel says, in these trying times, she feels so immersed in that circle, which you spoke of, between happiness and sadness, and it's great to have that validated. I love that chapter too, and that quote about, how, it's okay to have a good cry because you'll have a good laugh later. It's like that cleansing kind of that needs to happen. Beth Allgood had a question. What was your favorite sermon to write or deliver?
So, that's like asking you which one of your children you like the best. But I think maybe kindness. Um, I I very much love kindness. It's an amazing quality. But also in doing the research on that, um, it it kind of stopped me short a little bit. For those of you who haven't read it, there's a quote from Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he describes that as a Black man, he was in Paris, and he was raised in, you know, the mean streets of Baltimore, and some man was being very kind to him and doing all these favors, and the whole time this man was being kind to him and doing him these favors, Ta-Nehisi Coates says he kept waiting for something bad to happen. You know, was this man leading him into a trap? You know, what was the deal? And then finally they parted, and there was no deal. The man was just being kind. And so Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote of his deep sadness that he couldn't feel this kindness without, you know, all these protections that he had built up. And, you know, there are various places throughout the book where I really try to understand and address white supremacy. But man, when it popped up in kindness, that was such a surprise to me, and it just showed the depth of the pain. And I think that I like to deliver a sermon like that too, because people, I think, oh, kindness. Kindness is, you know, la la la, such a nice topic, and they don't expect it to go so deep. And I think actually all these topics go quite deep. Yeah.
That's fantastic. It really is true what you say about kindness. It's not a simple act of kindness. Those simple acts will go out and do far-reaching things. Also, Jennifer says, "Wait, which one of your children do you like the best?" Asking for a friend. Susanna says, "As you know, I love your book. It is so deeply wise and much needed in these very shaky, uncertain times. Are you continuing to write happiness sermons or writing generally about this topic? I think that just means I and the world need to keep hearing what you have to say." So do you have more pieces that you're writing?
Well, yes, I have been writing. I've been time, you know, is short, but I have been writing on my blog, The Happiness Paradigm, a series called Happiness in the Time of COVID. And I think I've done 6 or 7 of those so far, and I have quite a few in the pipeline in my brain still that I want to write. The Barnard Church has contacted me again. They think it's a church that is sparsely attended, and social distancing isn't really a problem for them. So they think they might want me back for a couple of sermons in August. So I'm thinking I want to write about mistakes and making mistakes. I want to write about acceptance. So yeah, I definitely have plenty to still write about.
Good. We have a comment from Bert. Please comment on the timing of the release of this book.
So the original plan was to release it. I think the original launch party was going to be set for July 28th. But there's a whole process of shipping out advanced readers' copies and things that just all got short-circuited, because when COVID hit in particular, I felt like I really wanted to get out there as much as possible, as soon as possible, because again, I also feel strongly that these are messages that are helpful for everybody to hear right now. And so it was pushed forward a little bit, and things were just done a little bit differently than normally they are in the publishing world. And so if any of you have contacts with radio shows and that you want to hook me up with somebody, I'm all about the radio.
Oh, good. Another question from Keith Curtis. Is there a tension between maintaining a state of happiness and fighting for justice? In the time of Trump, how do we keep our eyes on happiness?
Well, sort of that's what the whole book is about, but there is one chapter in particular which is written, chapter 3, which is written more specifically with activists in mind, and cites several happiness practices that can help us to be better fighters for social justice. Meaning is also really an important facet of happiness, and for me, I certainly find a great deal of meaning in fighting as much as I can. All the tools are so valuable, and for example, mindfulness. I think that one of the things that probably a lot of you here in this group tonight have been doing in the last few weeks is really trying to take a look at your white privilege and to understand that better. And, so mindfulness is a great tool to really pay attention to what's happening internally, to what's happening externally. And one other point I'll make, I was feeling last week, I started to feel like I have not been paying enough attention to my own happiness. And I know that that's important because I know that for me to be my best in the world, I have to cultivate my own happiness. And I've mentioned this a couple times, but I am a big believer in measurements. So I created a chart for myself, and it is hanging up on the wall in my bedroom. I wrote down about 10 different practices which nurture my own soul and help me be happier and help me be well and help me thrive. So it's my goal to make sure I do at least 5 of those every day. So certainly there can be a tension there, and we can get out of balance. Nothing wrong with that, and that's where, again, mindfulness comes in to say, oh, hey, I'm out of balance. What do I need to do to be more balanced and to live my own personal happiest life?
Great. Sharon Parker suggested you could record podcasts in addition to doing radio. So that's a good idea. Let's try to see if we have any questions. We still have some comments. Is it Ulrika? Ulrika was just going to say that finding meaningfulness in our lives, a daily quest, and thanks for stirring us all up and showing us some important ways. It's definitely good to have goals and to be mindful. Stephen is telling us that on Monday, Ginny had a wonderful 45-minute interview with Dave Graham on WDEV. He'll be sending a link for that, and we'll paste it on social media and on our website. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? It is a wonderful topic to discuss, and there are so many facets you can get into.
So many, and I have found, doing interviews, the interviewer can come at it from like any angle.
Yeah.
But any angle. What does this mean to this issue, or what does this mean to people who are having this problem in their lives? Or because it is something that is so big in all our lives, and I think we're sort of taught to minimize it instead of minimize its importance instead of maximizing its importance.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, that comes down to the measurement part. If what we're measuring isn't the happiness and well-being, but success based on, capitalism and money, then how can we live by something we don't measure? I love it. I think everybody's excited. No more questions? Maybe they're busy reading the book.
I think everybody knows how to reach me, but if anybody doesn't, you could always email me at happinessparadigm@gmail.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions you come up with later.
I'll put your email in the chat box. I again put the book link in the chat box in case anybody would like to order from Bear Pond Books. And Ginny's email, was it Happiness Paradigm, right? No,
Yes.
Preaching Happiness.
Happiness. Yeah, there's that too. We'll just say happinessparadigm@gmail.com.
Happiness, PARADIGM @gmail.com. Catherine says, this has been great. Look forward to getting the book. Ulrika says, it is personal and universal at the same time. Yes to the podcast. Something you might explore. Amabel says, I think we see the flaw of measuring by GDP right now, especially, yes, instead of GNH.
Well, I think when we, just looking at COVID and the desire to just hurry up and open up the economy at the expense of people's lives, there you go. That is pretty flawed.
It's very flawed. And the school system that's tied to that, everything. And the idea that, working parents are supposed to continue to work, but then homeschool their children as they've been home. And it's a big conundrum. So yeah, I found your book very helpful. I especially liked, just thinking of schools, you had the chapter on beauty mentioned how, schools aren't often places of beauty, right? They're just like a big concrete building with no windows, and you put your kids in there and nobody has something nice to look at for the day, and that can really impact how you're feeling. I'm hoping, with COVID, we really have to change a lot of things, and a lot of those things are going to have to be indoor spaces, ventilation, windows, things like that. And I'm hoping that, new designs come out that are, a little more in alignment with beauty and with nature, and that look nice and that are also healthful and healthy. Dave Molinaro says, we are enjoying the Zoom and Ginny's book as well, from Dave and Cricket.
I want to give a shout out to Dave Molinaro, who is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Dave is kind of a super citizen, good guy, who said, we need this G&H thing in Charlotte. And he has been kind of a one-man band who went to the city council, went to the county commissioners, and they are doing it. So Charlotte Mech, which is a really, really diverse city and county, they are working together to create a essentially a gross national happiness index. I think they're calling it the Charlotte Mech Wellbeing Index in Charlotte. And so I'm so proud of Dave, who just said, just a citizen who said, let's do it, and is making it happen. He's making it happen. So big applause for him.
Yay. Yay, Dave. Beth Allgood brought up a good point about exploiting animals and the earth that helped to lead to the pandemic in the first place, which is all, again, part of your book about best practices for the earth and animals.
Yes, Beth's work with the International Fund for Animal Welfare has been really informative on how really interconnected human happiness is with animal happiness, and nothing illustrates it more powerfully than COVID, which jumped to humans as a result of human mistreatment of animals.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like we can go on forever, but we might have to say goodnight soon. Does Bob want to do another song to end out our night, or do you have another way you'd like to end out our event, Ginny? What do you think?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for another way to end.
That's fine. It's just so different from when we have our bookstore events, because usually people like to come up and say hi and give hugs and have their book signed, and now we're just saying bye.
I will say this. I really believe that this book needs to be disseminated as widely as possible. And so, you know, we're doing our part with Rootstock, and you know, we're really pushing to get out there. And I'm hoping that at some point there'll be like a tipping point, and it will be better known. But any of you who just want to share it with friends, or you know, if you also feel moved that you think this is something that people should know about, then that would be great. So Barbara, I see Barbara saying we should all sing.
Everyone is unmuted.
Oh, good.
That'll be missed.
Singing together on Zoom really sounds pretty terrible.
Yeah. But the suggestion was that we should all clap now, so together.
Thank you, Ginny.
Thank you, Ginny. Nice job, everybody.
Hey.
job.
Great job.
Great job.
Thank you for coming, everyone. We will send
Thank
out a
you,
link to
Samantha.
this event once we have it ready. So if you joined up, everybody had to join up by email, so we'll send that out. And thanks for spreading the word about the book. Thanks for buying the book from Bear Pond Books. There it is again, so pretty.
It is beautiful.
Thanks, Bob, for your ukulele.
And thank you all. I don't know everybody, but most of you have in some important way contributed meaningfully to my happiness. So thank you for that.
And I don't know if Donnie Hoffman is here. I think I saw her earlier. Donnie Hoffman is the designer of the book, the cover, and then the art is by the art. Ginny, who did the artwork?
Mary Hill.
Mary Hill did the artwork. So that's where we got that wonderful.
Okay, I guess that's the end.
Yeah, let's take.
Thank you.
Bye, Ginny.
Great job.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thanks, Samantha.
Yeah.
Thank you, Samantha.
Get the word out on this book.
Yeah,
There were some people from Massachusetts on too.
that's right, Valerie.
One other,
And Marion was on, Marion Jansen.
here's one other suggestion before everybody leaves. Go on to Goodreads and rate it and write a review.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh, good idea.
Be well, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.